The city of Paris, usually a beacon of light and culture, lay under the suffocating blanket of the Nazi occupation. It was 1943. The Black Boot of the Third Reich had stamped out the joy of the City of Lights. The Eiffel Tower stood cold and inaccessible, stripped of its lift cables to prevent signaling. The streets echoed with the jackboots of German soldiers, and the air was thick with suspicion and fear. But in the shadows, hidden within the attics and basements of the city, a different kind of war was being fought. It was a war of invisible signals, of coded messages, and of desperate silence. At the heart of this shadow war sat a young woman, her fingers deftly tapping out Morse code on a suitcase transmitter, the blue light of the valves illuminating her determined face. She was a Muslim princess of Indian descent, a descendant of a sultan and a trained musician. But in this moment, she was the most dangerous woman in Paris to the Gestapo. She was the princess spy, the first female radio operator sent into Nazi-occupied France. Her name was Noor Inayat Khan, and her story is one of supreme courage, tragic betrayal, and a will of iron that refused to shatter under the most brutal torture the SS could devise. To understand Noor's bravery, we must first understand her unique origins. She was born in Moscow in 1914 to an American mother and an Indian father, Inayat Khan, who was a Sufi Muslim preacher and a direct descendant of Tipu Sultan, the legendary ruler of Mysore. Her childhood was a tapestry of cultures, moving between London, Paris, and Moscow. She was raised in an environment that valued spirituality, nonviolence, and the arts. She was gentle, shy, and described by those who knew her as quiet and introspective. She studied child psychology at the Sorbonne in Paris and was a talented writer of children's stories. When war broke out, Noor and her brother Vilayat initially wanted to help the Allies. However, it was the fall of France to the Nazis in 1940 that ignited the fire in her soul. Noor could not stand by and watch the fascist brutality consume a country she loved. She fled to England and joined the Women's Auxiliary Air Force, WAF, training as a wireless operator. Her gentle demeanor masked a core of steel. She was desperate to fight back against the tyranny that had consumed her adopted home. Her skills with radio telegraphy were exceptional. She could send and receive Morse code at incredible speeds. This talent caught the eye of the Special Operations Executive, or SOE, a secret British organization formed by Winston Churchill to set Europe ablaze. The SOE was looking for agents to infiltrate France, coordinate the French resistance, and prepare the way for the Allied invasion. It was the most dangerous work of the war. The life expectancy of a wireless operator in occupied France was only 6 weeks. Noor was eager to join. Despite her Sufi pacifist upbringing and her gentle nature, she volunteered immediately. She underwent intense training at Beaulieu, learning combat skills, weaponry, and escape techniques. Her instructors were skeptical. She was petite, she was polite, and she struggled with some aspects of physical training. They didn't think she had the ruthlessness to survive in the field. But Vera Atkins, the intelligence officer in charge of the women's section, saw something else in Noor. She saw a woman of immense integrity and unshakable calm. She believed Noor could do it. Atkins was right. In June of 1943, Noor was flown into France under the code name Madeline. She was the first female radio operator to be sent into the field, a distinction that carried a heavy burden. The wireless operators were the linchpins of the resistance. Without communication, the supply drops of weapons and money could not be coordinated, and the scattered resistance cells could not unite. As soon as Noor landed, the reality of her mission set in. The German counterintelligence units, specifically the Sicherheitsdienst or SD, were using sophisticated direction-finding trucks to sweep the city for radio signals. To transmit, a spy had to set up their set, connect to a power source, type out a message, and get out before the trucks pinpointed their location. It was a deadly game of hide-and-seek. Noor moved constantly. She carried her heavy radio in a suitcase, cycling through the streets of Paris, or hiding it in the houses of sympathetic resistance fighters. Noor became the lifeline for the French resistance in Paris. She was transmitting messages back to London almost every day, often several times a day. This was far more frequent than the operators usually dared to risk. Her messages kept London informed of German troop movements, V-weapon sites, and the status of the resistance networks. The Gestapo was baffled. They knew a new operator was in the city, someone skilled and incredibly fast. They nicknamed her the Phantom. They swept through arrondissements with their detectors, trying to pin her down. But Noor was always one step ahead. She changed her appearance constantly. She changed her code names. She mastered the art of blending into the crowd. She was operating in the very heart of the beast, under the nose of the SS headquarters in the Hotel Majestic. For months she evaded capture, fueled by a sheer determination to do her duty. She told her superiors that she would rather die fighting than return to the safety of England. She was fighting for France, but she was also fighting for her family's honor and for the freedom of the oppressed. However, the strain of her work was immense. She was living alone, isolated, and in constant terror. The resistance network she was working with, the Prosper Network, was growing increasingly insecure. In October of 1943, the network was betrayed from the inside. It was a catastrophe. Several key leaders were arrested. SOE ordered Noor to return to England immediately. Her safety was compromised, but Noor refused to abandon the mission. She was the only radio operator left in Paris. If she left, the resistance would be deaf. She told London that the agents who were left in Paris were depending on her. She said that she was the only one who could maintain the link. It was a decision of incredible heroism, but also fatal hubris. She stayed. She continued to transmit, even as the net was tightening around her. She became desperate to escape the dragnet that was falling over the city. By the end of October, Noor knew she had to run. She made arrangements to escape back to London. She contacted a double agent named Henri Dericourt, a Frenchman who worked for the Gestapo while pretending to be a resistance member. Noor did not fully trust him, but she saw no other way out. She arranged for a flight to pick her up. However, Dericourt betrayed her. On October 13, 1943, Noor was arrested in a Paris apartment. She attempted to fight back. She grabbed a suitcase, perhaps in hopes of using it as a shield or weapon, but she was overpowered. When the Gestapo officers questioned her, she tried to maintain her cover story. She told them she was Jean-Marie Renier, a nurse from Nantes. But the Gestapo had known who she was for a long time. They had known Madeline was Noor Inayat Khan. They had been hunting the princess spy. They finally had her. The SS immediately sent Noor to the Gestapo headquarters at 84 Avenue Foch. This was a place of unspeakable horror. It was the headquarters of the SS Security Service, run by the notorious Hans Joseph Kiefer. Kiefer was a sadist who specialized in breaking the will of prisoners. He decided to interrogate Noor personally. He expected her to break quickly. She was a princess, a writer of fairy tales, a woman. He assumed her resolve was fragile. He was wrong. For 10 long months, Noor Inayat Khan endured interrogations that defy human endurance. She was chained. She was kept in solitary confinement in freezing cells. She was starved. She was beaten. Kiefer and his men used torture methods that left physical and psychological scars. But Noor remained silent. Not once did she reveal a single code name. Not once did she give up a safe house. Not once did she betray her comrades. She maintained her cover story, Jean-Marie Renier, until the very end. The Germans could not break her. Despite the torture, Noor's spirit remained unbroken. She was known among her fellow prisoners for her kindness and her singing. She would comfort other women in the prison, sharing her meager food rations. In November 1943, she attempted a daring escape from Fraynes prison along with 2 other SOE agents, Floy Beakley and Gilbert Norman. They managed to pick the lock of their cell and reach the roof. But the alarm was raised. The guards opened fire. Noor knew it was over. She dropped to the ground and surrendered herself to save the others from being shot. The Germans were furious at her escape attempt. She was sent to Pforzheim prison in Germany, a fortress of stone and suffering. Here she was kept in chains, her hands and feet manacled together. The isolation was absolute. She was allowed no books, no writing paper, no contact with anyone. But even in this darkness, she held on. A fellow prisoner remembered seeing her through a ventilation grate, clutching a scrap of tin, scratching the word Liberté onto the sides of her cell. It was her prayer, her manifesto, and her defiance. As the war turned against Germany, the Nazis began to clear their prisons. They did not want the liberated Allies to find the evidence of their crimes, nor the spies who had survived their torture. In September 1944, Noor Inayat Khan and 3 other female SOE agents were transferred to Dachau concentration camp. The conditions in Dachau were a hell beyond Fraynes. It was a factory of death. On the night of September 12, 1944, Noor and her companions were led out to the execution yard. The war was nearly over, the Allies were close, but Noor would not see liberation. The Gestapo was murdering the witnesses. The commandant of the camp, a man named Hartgenfeld, refused to shoot a woman personally. He delegated the task to a younger officer named George Wilhelm. Noor Inayat Khan was executed by a single bullet to the back of the head. She was 30 years old. When the camp was liberated by the Americans just a few months later, the details of her death were discovered. Her body was found in the mass grave. A small, fragile woman with the heart of a lion. Back in London, Vera Atkins and the SOE had searched for her. They knew she had been caught, but they did not know her fate. They only learned the truth after the war ended when the files of the concentration camps were recovered. The full horror of her sacrifice came to light. 10 months of torture. Solitary confinement. Starvation. And she had never spoken. She had died as she lived, protecting the secret identities of her comrades. Noor Inayat Khan became the first Indian woman to be awarded the George Cross, Britain's highest civilian award for gallantry. It was an honor she never lived to receive. France awarded her the Croix de Guerre with Gold Star, the highest military honor they have. She is remembered today as a heroine who defied every stereotype. A princess who chose to fight in the mud and the blood. A pacifist who picked up the sword of espionage. A Muslim who fought for the freedom of Europe. Her life was short, but her legacy is immense. She stood against the greatest evil of the 20th century, and she did not blink. She swallowed the codes, she endured the pain, and she paid the ultimate price. Her story is not just one of tragedy, but of the indomitable human spirit. It is a story that asks us, how strong are we? Could we, under the threat of torture, protect others? Noor Inayat Khan could. She was the spy princess, the phantom of Paris, and the light that refused to go out. The Nazis could imprison her body, but they could never capture her soul. She typed her final message in the silence of her cell at Dachau. Liberté. And indeed, her sacrifice contributed to the liberation of France, to the freedom of Europe, and the ultimate defeat of the Nazis. She paid the price so that others could be free. Today, her name is etched in the memorial at Dachau, and her medal rests in the Imperial War Museum. But her true memorial is in the sky she looked at from her aircraft, the ground she defended with her life, and the hearts of everyone who hears her story. She was a warrior. She was a saint. She was a hero.
Like, share, and subscribe for more powerful real-life stories of brave women who changed history with courage.